It has been written by Marga Minko, okay? She's the author of this lesson. She joined as a trainee journalist in the year 1938. When she looks at all the objects that are placed over there, she is completely horrified at the very sight of all these objects. There is importance of closure that the speaker talks about in this beautiful story over here. Hello and welcome to your prep school English classes. I'm your English teacher, Kshama. In this session today, we're going to take up the second chapter from your textbook, Snapshots, named as The Address. We're going to find out whose address is it, whose address are we visiting, and what do we find in that address. The address is by Marga Minko. In this particular session, we are going to talk about the author, who is the author of the lesson, okay, and background of the lesson, of course, the entire, we are going to summarize the entire lesson as well as recap what are the events that have happened in the lesson. Now, without wasting any time, where is the address? What is the address all about? It has been written by Marga Minko, okay? She's the author of this lesson. She joined as a trainee journalist in the year 1938. Okay, so we are talking in the context or during the World War II. She existed in that time period, and she has all of her writings have a lot to do with this particular time period. Now, she contracted mild form of tuberculosis, and later on in the World War II, none of her family members, could make it. It was her parents, her brother, her sister. They were all deported out of the country, but she escaped and spent her time in hiding. Okay, when she spent her time in hiding, that's when she met her husband-to-be, okay, the translator Bert Wharton. Now, he is the one she fell in love with and got married to. So, she met him in 1938, and during the war, they hid together. Later on, after the war, they worked with a lot of newspapers and magazines, of course. They also had two daughters, and one of them also became a writer later on. So her name is Jessica Wharton. She turned 100-year-old in the year 2020, March 2020. That's what we know about Marga Minko. So during the World War II, she hid herself. She couldn't save, the rest of her family was deported out of the country. Then she hid herself, and that is when she found her husband-to-be. And they fell in love, they married, they had two daughters. They also went on to, he was also a translator. So they worked with a lot of newspapers and magazines. This particular instance that we are talking about, the address, in a nutshell to give you is, the daughter's search. After the war is over, the daughter actually is given an address by her mother. Okay. She goes to the address to actually, she knows that all the belongings, all the objects that were there in the house were actually taken by people who live in this particular address. She wanted to go back and find out if she can relive the memories or the experiences that she felt when she was there surrounding those objects. She wanted to check. Let's see what happens when she does so. So in the beginning of the lesson, we see that this the speaker of the lesson, the girl over here, is facing another person, another woman. She has knocked on her door and has asked, "Do you recognize me? Do you know me? Do you still know me?" To which the person, who has opened the door, the lady says, "No, I don't know you." Okay. But she introduces herself saying that I am, Mrs. S's daughter. Mrs. S is her mother's name. I'm her daughter. Do you recognize me now at least? Then there was no sign of recognition on the woman's face. She was like, "No, I still don't know you. Who are you?" Later on, the speaker actually wondered, have I come to the wrong address by any chance? Am I bothering a woman that is nowhere related to me? Is it a wrong address? But then when she sees the green, hand-knitted cardigan that the lady is wearing, she becomes sure of the fact that it is the correct address. I've come to the correct address. She is wearing the cardigan that my mother wore. It is a green cardigan, the same old cardigan. Okay. So, and then now that the lady knows that this girl has recognized me, okay, it's the cardigan, the green knitted cardigan, of course, that let everything out. So she asks, "Have all of you come back? Have your parents, your siblings, everybody has come?" To which the girl sadly says, "No, it's only me. I have come back." Okay, she has come back after the war is over, the World War II, of course. Then, "I can't do anything for you. I can't see you one more time. There's nothing I can do about it." She says, I don't think there's much I can do to help you or do something about whatever the cause that you're here for. So it is clearly a no, you can't even come inside. But when she checks the address, it's the correct address. It's the nameplate Darling number 46. It's the correct address. She's the same lady. If that is the case, all the objects or the things that belong to her mother, be it, the cutlery, the, vessels that they used and the pottery, all the vases and everything should be here. But is that the case? What will she be able to at least see those objects? Now, as of now, how it looks, I don't think that is possible. Let's see. Now, where did she receive the address from? During the first half of the war, when she visited the house, she saw that her mother actually thought that the daughter would not notice. But she noticed that a lot of changes had happened in the house. Is it the same case for you? If you have moved from the house for a long period of time, if changes have been made, will you be able to notice? Right? So she over here was able to notice and she sees a lot of things have been changed. Or is it that a lot of things are missing? Okay, she notices that mother had given the address long ago. Then during the first half of the war, she was visiting home. Then there were a lot of changes, a lot of missing pieces were there in the house. Then the mother explains what are the reasons for these missing pieces. A lot of objects in the house were missing. What is the reason? Mrs. Darling, all of a sudden, an old acquaintance had arrived all of a sudden. And she had told, if you guys were to leave this country and go away, what will be the use of all these objects? What will you do of all these? It'll be wasted. So let me take it along with me. Okay, that's what she did. Every time she came, she takes one thing or the other. Then there were antique plates, large vases, crockery and so on. She took one at a time. Every time she came, she kept her hand on one thing and started taking everything, emptying the place. Okay. So if we were to leave, we shall lose everything, she says. The lady, who is it? Mrs. Darling. As of now, we know the speaker and her mother and Mrs. Darling, whom she visited before, who denied her any entry or any sort of help. She could have at least asked her to come inside. Poor girl has lost her family and everything, has suffered through the consequences of war, right? She could have at least invited her over a coffee or something for a talk. She did not do. Then there was no scope for agreement or disagreement. When the daughter actually asks the mother, did you agree for her to take all of this away? It is ours. It is our belonging. How are you allowing her to take everything? But then, do you think there was much scope for agreement or disagreement? You yourself are being moved from your country, or many people are being killed, as the result of war. Now, what will these objects do? These are just objects. When human beings are being replaced, what about these objects? There's not much to agree or disagree, right? Disagreeing would be like, it won't be good, she says. Then, what happens after that? She doesn't give up. She goes back again. She decides to go back again. But before that, when she was walking in the familiar places, the places that she knew earlier, she didn't want it to, give herself too much into the places or the memories associated with it, because it will end up hurting her. It will be painful, right? Then she can't revisit the painful, precious moments. Although the familiarity she has, she knows the place, she knows the houses or the street corner or the shop that was there. She knows it. And the sense of familiarity is good. But how far can you go with the sense of familiarity? It will eventually get you back to the idea that you have lost this place. You don't live here any longer. These experiences that you had with these places are just memories. They no longer can be continued, right? There are people also associated with this experience and they can't be brought back. Next, unlike humans, these things wait to be brought back. Now, is she going to get all the things back? No, not really. Can she do it? Given the scenario, I don't think she can have a look at it, at least. Then, after the liberation, she recalls how the breads became lighter and there were beds given to, sleep properly. There was a view. She, in a nutshell, tries to think of how was the war and how was the aftermath of war. Of course, they've, gotten some bread to eat and a place, a shelter to stay and to sleep and a view to see. But there's so much, literally so much that they have lost. From people to experiences to, places they lived in, they have lost so much. War is, again, as I say, always has its own gigantic macroscopic and microscopic, damages that it does. It's not a surface level thing. There are layers and layers of generational losses that war does, right? But then she had curiosity before the war or after the war ended. Soon after that, she didn't have like the idea of wanting to go and get all the things back or grab it all. But eventually she wanted to go and see all those things, touch it and feel how it feels and just recall all the moments. Okay, that is why she's here. But then she pays second visit to the same address. But fortunately this time, the lady is somewhere busy. Her 15-year-old daughter answers the door and the door is open. She invites her in. At least that is a good news. Now, when she invites her over a cup of coffee, come sit inside. Mom is doing some work. She's busy. She'll be here very soon. You have a seat, she says. Now, Mrs. Darling is busy, hence a chance to get in. What happens when she gets inside? When she looks at all the objects that are placed over there, she is completely horrified at the very sight of all these objects. Is it that the objects have brought back the horror that is attached with them? What has happened? What happened when it was there surrounding her? All the beautiful moments were shattered to pieces, right? Now she's horrified at the sight of these familiar objects kept in an unfamiliar surrounding. This aura of these objects, it is kept in a very tasteless, haphazard manner. One is placed here, the other one is placed over there. It felt like they don't know the meaning and the value of these objects or how much important were these to her mother. Okay, it was a tasteless arrangement in an ugly format, ugly furniture. There was a muggy smell. It was stinking. Maybe because of that also, it all contributed to her feeling terrible. Okay, then there was a woolen tablecloth. She was actually trying to find a burnt mark over there. Again, trying to search for a mark of familiarity in such unfamiliar aura and an unfamiliar place. Then as she was looking for that, the 15-year-old girl was looking at her very questionably. Like, what is it? Do you know something about it? Or what are you looking for? That's how she was, looking at her. So when the 15-year-old girl was saying about something, it didn't take the speaker a lot of looking at the objects to find out what she was talking about. She exactly knew what you were talking about, be it the mantelpiece or the antique pieces or the vases. She knew exactly what she was talking about because it's her own belongings. It's from her own house, right? How would you feel if, everything from your house was taken away? Things, as long as we have it, we would have touched a pot in the house or a painting in the house or merely have, one or two glances at it. But imagine if all of them are taken away from you. Anything, for instance, only when it is absent, only when it is taken away is then when we realize how valuable it was, how much, meaningfulness it added to your presence, to your surrounding, to your own existence, right? Then the speaker searches for the connections. Then she also recollects how, she fancied all these objects. There was a beautiful apple that was there, which was an antique piece, of course. She fancied as to how she wanted to play with them. And then the very voices that were talking in her head. Oh, so you recognize this piece now? This is the same painting. That is the same wall piece. When she heard her own voice in the head, it felt very unusual, unfamiliar to her. It felt like it was very uncanny. It was very unlike her. Then she used to touch it, hardly ever cared to look at it. But when it is not present there, its absence haunts. That's what she's talking about. Until her mother one day asked her to come and help her clean the cutlery, she did not know that it was actually all the spoons, forks and everything that they used to eat with, all the plates and everything was made of silver. It was only on the day when her mother asked her to come help clean it that she realized that all these are silver. Did I ever not notice it? What is happening? The 15-year-old girl, to her, she asks, do you also not know that it is made out of silver? Can you go and see? And then when she goes and checks for all the, drawers, she realizes when the speaker is leaving, she decides it's time and I'll leave. She doesn't wait for Mrs. Darling. It was terrible to be around these objects that no longer have any meaning for her. It was choking for her and she wanted to leave. But she was like, the 15-year-old daughter of Mrs. Darling was like, do you not want to wait for mom then? But she was like, no, I'll leave. The 15-year-old girl ran and checked whether the cutlery was actually made out of silver. The speaker could actually hear the noise of her checking. Then the address was correct, but she doesn't want to remember it anymore for all the reasons I have given to you. Okay. In the unfamiliar aura that it is kept in, all the familiar objects, it no longer has any meaning for her. Okay, it has nothing, it has moved to nothingness. Okay, so she is visited the address given by her mother, but she is not welcomed. Okay, But when she goes there, we get to know that it is from her mother that she has received the address during the first half of the war, as all the objects from her house, most of them were taken by Mrs. Darling. Then, when she revisited, she was welcomed by Mrs. Darling's 15-year-old daughter, who helps her see around all over the place. But when she goes inside, she's horrified by the arrangement of these objects and the way these objects are making her feel. The vibe of the place was not okay. Both the place and the objects for now. So she wanted to erase these memories and to forget it all. It feels like she has gotten a complete closure. There was uncertainty. There was this feeling of incompleteness, right? Now that she has come to this place, she has seen it all, it belongs to somebody else. It gives us a sense of closure. It gives her a sense of closure where she can let go of all these things and start fresh, right? Now, war, as we talked about, there is unending damage that war does, and this is one minute example of it. Then, there is importance of closure that the speaker talks about in this beautiful story over here. Imagine when you're feeling, terrible, you don't know the reason for something that is happening. Right when you find a reason, it's like a closure. You understand why something was happening and you feel much better, right? That's what happens over here. So the objects linked with memories of former times, they tend to lose their value when kept far away or kept in a, environment that you have no clue about. Okay, so she thinks, anyway, this was of no use to me in my new small apartment. Where will I keep all of these things? She consoles herself and leaves the place and wants to erase all the memories. We have read about many stories related to war, and I feel like it is essential for us to read such things, because it is our gateway or lens through which we can understand the atrocities and what happened during the times of war, how was the life of people. It makes us understand what was happening. Similarly, that's what literature does, right? It's the reflection of what is happening in the society at that particular period of time, or even before that. That is the reason behind why is it important to document things, to write things, to articulate it as much as possible. It is to let people know. Now that we know that this is what war does to people, be it in a larger level or in a smaller level, we know the larger damages that war can do. But even in the minute levels, it can scar you for life, right? Reading that, you might ask, how is this person articulating this thing can help us? It can help us to understand what we should not do. It's not about always what we should do. You read and also understand what you should not do. And because what are the consequences? You have read through the consequences. You wouldn't want to be in this environment like that, right? So that's what literature does to you, and that's why you'll all have to appreciate and create and contribute more to literature. On that note, I'll see you all in the next class. Thank you.